The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon or morning, if that's where you're coming from, and welcome to Reproaction's Act and Learn webinar for the month of April 2023. Today's topic is very important and maddening in the midst of the human rights crisis that we're now in, to find that big tech is also failing on abortion. It's not just our governments. So first, we'll start off with an introduction of your host today. First voice you hear is Erin Matson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm co-founder and executive director of Reproaction, and I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I am on Twitter at Erin to the Max.
And my name is Elizabeth Skoski. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Development and Operations Manager at Reproaction. I'm based in Westchester, New York, and you can find me on Twitter at Elizabeth Skoski.
Awesome. Okay, so first, a little bit about our agenda. We will introduce Reproaction. Then we will share just a brief overview on how big tech really not only is blowing up, but they need to step up. Reproaction is going to be releasing a survey in the near future that we conducted of reproductive health rights and justice organizations about content being suppressed or censored by big tech, as well as anti-abortion disinformation. So we're going to give an overview of some results that you'll see in that survey in the future. Then we're going to have a panel discussion with experts. We are so excited to be joined by just some really important different perches within the movement of interaction with this issue. So we'll have Rebecca Davis from Hey Jane, Maria Alejandra Pez and Yamila Ruiz from National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice, and Erin Jorgensen from Shout Your Abortion. Then we'll go to next steps and Q&A. Few housekeeping matters. One, if you have a question at any time, just put it into the questions tab and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. If while Rebecca's speaking and you have a question for her, you can just put it in the questions tab, then we'll get to as many as possible at the end. Another piece is if you like to live tweet, if you're still on Twitter, we all know it's been a rocky road since Elon Musk took over. You can use the hashtag Reproaction and join the conversation there. That also makes it easier for us to retweet you. We will be live tweeting from our account at Reproaction. So a bit about our organization. Reproaction leads bold action to increase access to abortion and advance reproductive justice. We're known for our left flank analysis and our willingness to hold folks on all sides of the issue accountable, whether they're traditionally considered allies or opposition, or if they like to present themselves as the cool good guys like big tech when they're actually really failing and blowing it. And we're known for our commitment to nonviolent direct action as one of the tools in our toolbox. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about, I situated, Reproaction does direct action. We do strategic communications and research. And one thing that we noticed is that we actually got pulled into this issue because big tech themselves were suppressing our content. So if you look at that picture on the left, that's actually yours truly delivering a letter to Facebook's Washington, D.C. policy office, hand delivering and specifically what had happened was that Facebook started suppressing or censoring, not running our posts sharing the World Health Organization protocol for self-managed abortion with pills. I want to be clear, this is happening at the same time that Mark Zuckerberg himself personally allowed Live Action or Lila Rose's anti-abortion disinformation to go through in contravention of their own policies. So we hand delivered that petition. We were turned away at the door, but of course we put the whole thing on Facebook Live. You can see some examples here on how Instagram, which is another Meta or Facebook property, was hiding the hashtags for mifepristone and misoprostol. You can see on the right, we've also done hand deliveries of petitions to Twitter's office when they were allowing anti-abortion disinformation to run on their site. We've also had content suppressed on Twitter as well. This is something that you'll hear more in-depth stories from our panelists today, but this is something that is happening around the movement. It is a serious problem. And just to connect the dots on why this matters so much. So we hold that human rights include bodily autonomy, which includes by necessity access to abortion. There's no question that in the United States, as well as around the world right now, there is a crisis in access to reproductive health care. Here in the US, largely wrought by that horrific Dobbs decision. However, that assault on abortion access was happening before. We know now there is much chaos and confusion following Judge Kaczmarek, the Texas judge, ruling on the abortion pill, in which he tried to say the FDA's more than 20-year track record of approval of safe and effective medication abortion, or mifepristone, shouldn't hold. And then the various machinations at the Fifth Circuit and the Supreme Court. Right now, those pills are, the Supreme Court has issued a stay, so those pills still are accessible right now. But the confusion is the point. And I bring that up because the point is this, why it matters so much with big tech. That access to quality information is a critical piece of being able to exercise our human right to bodily autonomy. That abortion options include not just in clinic and medication abortion, but self-managed abortion with pills. And we should be able to freely get out information about how to get abortion pills, how to use abortion pills, and big tech is blocking that while allowing disinformation to flourish. So I think it's important that we follow, that we're looking at what big tech does on abortion, that this issue is as urgent as what's happening with the laws right now in the middle of this abortion access crisis. So I'm going to top line some survey results from our survey. So we did a survey of reproductive health rights and justice organizations on this issue of content suppression, or to give examples of that, like our World Health Organization protocols for self-managed abortion with pills, Facebook removing that post. There have been instances where abortion providers themselves have shared news articles about abortion and had those suppressed, where Twitter is putting warning labels on content about abortion, merely sharing news articles. So I just want to share some initial findings and concerns about this suppression issue, or censorship, whichever word you want to use. What we're talking about is them either removing or making it harder for people to see quality information about abortion. Before Dobbs, about 40% of respondents said they were somewhat concerned. About a quarter said they were concerned, and another quarter said they were very concerned. And then following Dobbs, it shot up to 64%. That's an increase of 40% of people who are concerned. So people are really concerned about the state of accurate abortion information, the ability to access that on social media. The top 3 platforms where users had the most issues with content suppression were Facebook, Google, and TikTok. And a bit more about that. What types of information are various reproductive health rights and justice organizations having removed? About a quarter said positive affirmation on abortion, so just positive, loving messages about abortion access. About a quarter for just general medical information. About 20% how or where to obtain pills for abortion, and same about guides about where to obtain abortion services, or just even the simple fact and truth that abortion is safe. So to talk a little bit about content suppression and removal, another big piece of this is that many times reproductive health rights and justice organizations are having their content flagged automatically by keyword or AI, artificial intelligence, and it's very, very difficult to stay on top of what the rules are because the algorithms are changing and there is not transparency in the algorithm. Or worse, folks didn't know why it was suppressed or they weren't told. The most common reasons, a lot of times they don't give a reason, and we've experienced that repeatedly at Reproaction. But the most common reason that we heard, or the top two, were that content was inaccurately flagged as political. And I will say, that's a big piece of the puzzle. When I've spoken with people at Facebook before, the reality is they've decided to code abortion as a political issue, no matter what. So even though there's medical sides to abortion and information pieces about abortion, they're like, okay, this is political. So it leads them to make inane decisions, like not allowing some of colleagues in our field who are just simply putting up employment announcements for a membership coordinator, blocking those kind of posts before an election because they're saying in the 2 weeks before election because they say it's political. Another one that's commonly being said is that the site bans sale or use of unsafe substances. And specifically, our colleagues in the field who are directly providing medication abortion are running into this a lot. And there are deep problems with this because for many, and we'll hear from one such colleague today, medication abortion is something that people are accessing online through clinics that may not have a brick and mortar presence at all. So being able to accurately get information and pills out there is critical. And medication abortion is safe. It's safer than Tylenol. It is overwhelmingly safe, to the point that it's boringly safe, right? And so both of these issues are just frankly hogwash. And the one other piece that I just like to say about this is, they like to kind of make the algorithm transparent. Let's be very clear. There's a human who is making these decisions, and humans need to be held accountable for what is happening. So just some big picture observations about what's happening on suppression within the movement writ large. Survey respondents are already switching how they spell abortion to bypass content suppression. So like, for example, instead of spelling out abortion with O, they might throw in a 0. There are still questions about whether the intended audience and those seeking abortion information services can see the content when they're looking for it, when they're actively looking for it. And content suppression is rapidly becoming a resource or issue for organizations. It takes so much time and staff effort trying to get content back up online. It's ridiculous what's happening. And the initial response from companies is almost always oh, it was a mistake. And they claim that they're not suppressing posts about abortion. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Liz to talk a little more about disinformation.
Thank you. All right, so a little bit about disinformation. There's a lot of terms flying around, disinformation, misinformation, fake news, those things. So we're going to parse it out a little bit and see where disinformation stands. So disinformation as a definition is the deliberately misleading or biased information, manipulated narrative or facts, propaganda. So the way that it kind of differs from misinformation, that is false information that is spread regardless of whether or not there is an intent to mislead. So a few weeks ago, we had Trump up here in court in New York City, and there was a bunch of misinformation just flying around that we got his weight, it was revealed, all of that. So there was no real intent to mislead. There's no real purpose behind it. It was just something that was floating around and was getting picked up as misinformation. Then on the opposite side of it, there's fake news, which is purposefully crafted, sensational, emotionally charged, misleading, fabricated information. And that's a lot of the headlines that come up on Facebook with those inflammatory headlines. There was a big one, I think, a couple years ago, like Nancy Pelosi diverts Social Security funds to pay for Trump impeachment. So these are deliberately crafted to incite people and make people angry. So those, you can see already how they kind of work together. And I have this quote from the Scientific American article about how abortion disinformation, it is very similar to misinformation, but the intention is to promote an anti-abortion agenda. So the two can't be pulled apart completely, but it's when somebody is spreading falsehoods created by someone with disingenuous aims is where we come down to it. So some of the disinformation examples that you've likely seen are claims that abortion is never medically necessary. We know that that's a complete falsehood. False claims around the idea that abortion causes infertility, injury, or even death, and even the use of the term chemical pill abortion. A promotion of the unproven and unethical abortion pill reversal, references to crisis pregnancies and what they offer, or more accurately, what they do not offer. The idea of fetal pain, which was something that was actually referenced, disinformation claim that was referenced in the Dobbs ruling, and the old, beat of the drum that it stops a beating heart, or the heartbeat ban. So these are the things that they're pushing for the intentional misleading of people with their disinformation claims. So some of our results based on disinformation, it's a little trickier to spot, and it's a little harder to report because a lot of we had a rush of censorship from big tech. But as Erin said, this has been going on since before Dobbs, and this disinformation has been allowed to flow unchecked on a lot of the platforms. So of the health rights and justice organizations that we surveyed, over half of them had reported anti-abortion disinformation on social media platforms, with even more experiencing it. So that idea that it's out there and you're just like constantly getting inundated with it in this sphere. And those that had reported it, the majority stated that they never heard a response back from social media platforms about their reports on anti-abortion disinformation. So like Erin said, even when it was reported to Twitter that it was being, flourishing on their platform, there was just no response to it. So we asked these health rights and justice organizations what they would most want as far as seeing disinformation checked on the platforms, what action they would want to see. And the clear winner was rewriting a clearer set of rules and expectations for advertising that they could commit to on a continued basis, taking down the offending ads, and of course, donating the profits from that purchase to reproductive rights groups. Would love to see that. And then, of course, banning repeat offenders from advertising again with their platforms. So our big picture observations with the disinformation is that anti-abortion disinformation, of course, has a detrimental effect on reproductive justice organizations, especially as they are combating that disinformation as it has filtered down to people on the ground. So people who are seeking abortion, people who are looking for information about abortion, the actual information, they're having to fight back against that disinformation, wasting a lot of time and energy. They're using a lot of time and energy countering disinformation and educating abortion seekers on the safety of abortion, as well as what actually occurs during an abortion. There's also a safety concern for abortion seekers who may not know what is or is not valid health information, and then it creates a fear and a frustration and just a general chaos in those that might be seeking abortions. And crisis pregnancy centers and their networks are often the driving force of this disinformation regarding abortions.
All right, thank you so much for that, Liz. Now I'm very excited and honored to introduce Rebecca Davis from Hey Jane. Rebecca is the head of brand marketing at Hey Jane, the virtual clinic offering telemedicine abortion care. In her more than 15 years working at the intersection of storytelling and strategy, she's helped brands and organizations launch, grow, and evolve in a way that's authentically impactful. Prior to Hey Jane, Rebecca held leading roles at Urban Outfitters, Ann Taylor, and Well and Good, and she is the founder of the grassroots activist group Rally and Rise. Welcome, Rebecca, and I am going to pass over the screen to you because I understand you've got some slides to share. So one moment.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. I am Rebecca. I'm with Hey Jane. I want to thank Reproaction so much for giving us this platform to share the ways that big tech has been failing Hey Jane among our many partners in the space. And I also want to thank everyone for joining this call. It's been a very, very stressful month, year, decade, whatever you want to call it for abortion. I know for those of us who are working in this space, it's really meaningful to know that there are people out there that support our work and want to make sure that abortion access is protected for people. If you are not familiar with Hey Jane, we are a telemedicine clinic providing abortion care. As was mentioned earlier, we do not have a brick and mortar location. We are fully virtual. We send people FDA approved abortion pills. We've also got an incredible clinical care team that's always a text message away from our patients. So we are really able to provide not just medical support, but emotional support as well before, during, and after a medication abortion. We have helped more than 25,000 people get safe abortion care. And through that, we've been able to glean some learnings on how people get information when they're seeking out care. And something that's really struck us is that nearly half of our abortion patients have told us that they first turned to friends, family, or social media for treatment information. And it's for that reason that at Hey Jane, we have really tried to focus on building up our social media presence so we're able to meet people where they're at when they're seeking out accurate information. We were the first telemedicine abortion clinic to be verified on Instagram and the first telemedicine abortion clinic to be verified on TikTok. We are actually the most followed abortion clinic period on all of TikTok. And so we know that these channels are really important when it comes to truly connecting with people who are seeking care during this pivotal moment. We also know that for people who aren't necessarily finding us through social media, they might be using other channels for information, such as going to Google and searching. But once they come to us and they find our website, they'll then often check us out on social media to make sure that we're legit. It's kind of like the same thing you might do before you're like online shopping. You want to make sure the place where you're sharing your personal information with is credible. There are unfortunately some scams online. And so that we know that a lot of our patients, if they're not finding out about us through social media, they might be using social media to vet us. The information, a publication had interviewed one of our patients who said that, when she found out she was pregnant and didn't want to be, her mom Google searched, saw an article about us. But the thing that really made her feel like she could trust us was that she had seen our videos on TikTok. And that was how she knew that we were a credible clinic, which is why we have just been so frustrated with the ongoing censorship and suppression of our content on social media. So even though we are verified, even though we are legit script certified, which is required on, for example, on Meta within their terms for content guidelines, because we're legit script certified, that should mean that we are allowed to talk about things like abortion pills and where to access care. And yet our experience has been that we are constantly getting caught in these kind of censorship suppression traps. I know that our partners in the space who are also going to be talking today will have many other examples of this. So we are definitely not alone here. A couple examples on TikTok. We regularly will have content removed. We have had our account banned multiple times. We've also spent a lot of time in what I call the appeal process limbo. We'll appeal something because pretty much 99.9% of the time, these censorship moments are unfounded. We have not gone against any content guidelines. It sometimes takes weeks for appeals to be reviewed. Other times appeals will be reviewed immediately, and we will basically have them turn down our appeal without any real explanation for why. And when we've tried to get answers from TikTok about what it is exactly that's triggering these moments of censorship, we're not really getting a clear answer there. The other thing that I think in some ways is even more troubling is the way that social media also suppresses our account, specifically through search. So, for example, we noticed earlier this year that even though we are verified on Instagram, if you try to search Hey Jane on Instagram, our profile would not appear. The image that I have on the left is actually from my personal account. So I obviously followed Hey Jane. So even if you followed Hey Jane, if you searched Hey Jane on Instagram, we would not appear. The only way that we would show up is if you typed up the exact way that our profile is spelled. It's Hey Jane Health. So you would have to know that that was our profile name. And even when you type that in, you'll see the top option that appears is actually an account impersonating us. So Instagram was serving people impersonating accounts ahead of our verified account. We know that this is something that, for anyone who might be searching for care or trying to vet if we are a credible provider, if we are not searchable, that means that people will either not be able to connect with us, not be able to find us, or wonder if we're legit. It really does block people from accessing care, especially when we know that care is very time sensitive. We tend to receive an influx of DMs from people when this happens. It happens, I wish it didn't happen as frequently as it does. Just last week, we were once again kind of shadow banned from search. We have people who reach out to us who say, I tried every single variation of your name and nothing came up. This seems a little weird, just wanted to let you know. So we really know that it's impacting people's ability to connect with care. I'm sure that other people on this call will share a few calls to action. Just two things that I wanted to mention. One is if you see something, say something, and most importantly, please screenshot it. We don't always realize when content and profile suppression is happening. As was mentioned earlier, we want to be able to focus on our patients, and focusing on our social media censorship has taken up just an absurd amount of our time. So letting us know when this is happening is actually really helpful, and especially if you can screenshot it in the moment, that gives us something that we can take back to the big tech companies to show. If we don't have examples to show them, they tend to dismiss it. The other thing that I wanted to call out is, follow organizations and clinics and do your best to regularly amplify them. We know that the algorithm might be, pushing down our content or making it harder to find. So the more people who are able to share it and share it to their circles and their followers and their communities, the more likely it is that we're able to get the word out about accessing care. I mentioned at the beginning of the slides that we know almost half of our patients first turn to friends, family, or social media. So I think individuals really have so much power when it comes to being able to share accurate information. And if you want to find us on social media, we are at Hey Jane Health. Hopefully we will be showing up for you. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. And I will make myself the presenter again. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to introduce our next two panelists at once, and then they will tag team and go together. Both of our panelists are from the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice, and we're so glad they're here today. So first, Yamila Ruiz, she, her, ella pronouns, serves as the Senior Director of Communications and Public Affairs. She's the proud daughter of immigrant parents to the U.S. and carries that struggle with her in her everyday work. She has a background in policy communications, labor advocacy, and worker organizing, believes that storytelling must be at the center of every campaign fighting for economic, gender, and racial justice in America. And as such, her career has been focused on advancing and centering BIPOC worker voices in federal and state minimum wage, legislative, and ballot initiatives across the U.S. And then after Yamila, we'll be joined with Maria Alejandra Pez, the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice, the social media manager there. Maria Alejandra uses she, her, ella pronouns and has over 5 years of digital and marketing experience within the reproductive justice field, and I imagine has a lot to say about what's going on right now. She specializes in social media and digital management and is responsible for the brand awareness and social engagement across all social media platforms used at the Latina Institute, as well as campaign creation and distribution. She's the daughter of Guatemalan immigrants, a first-generation college grad, and currently lives in sunny LA, but is originally from Boston, which is not as sunny and warm. So I'll pass it over to Yamila to get us started.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Shamila Ruiz. I am joined here with my colleague, Maria Alejandra Paz. We're so glad to be talking with you today about tech misinformation in our comunidad. A little bit about the Latina Institute for those who don't know. The National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice fights for equal access to reproductive health for Latina and Latinx communities. We have national offices in New York and DC, as well as state presence fighting on state legislative priorities in Florida, New York, Texas, and Virginia. We know that for too long, complex systems of oppression have robbed our communities and communities of color across the US of the resources that we need to make informed decisions about our bodies. Our theory of change at the Latina Institute is fueled by building our activist base, shaping policies, driving policy change forward, and shifting culture and narrative shifts to fuel a larger reproductive justice movement. The culture shift, narrative shift work is where Maria Alejandra and I really focus our digital and communication strategy and time. We're so proud to work in solidarity with allies on this call, like Reproaction, Hey Jane, as well as others, including NAPOF and Our Own Voice, which form up a coalition called In Our Own Intersections of Our Lives, as well as many others in the reproductive justice fight. Just want to give another thank you to Reproaction for organizing this important conversation today. We feel this is something that we talk about all the time, so we feel very excited to bring this resource and conversation to all of you here today. So thank you for those who took the time to join this call. As has been discussed, since the Supreme Court decision last year to overturn Roe v. Wade, as states have rushed to further restrict or ban access to abortion care, combined with all the legal challenges happening, it has left so many people confused about what the laws are in their own states and where they can go for accurate information or care. This unfortunately makes it so much easier to spread misinformation, particularly among Latinas and other non-English speaking immigrant communities in the US. As legal challenges like we recently saw with the mifepristone, Supreme Court elevation has just made it through their courts, this misinformation and those who spread misinformation are capitalizing on that confusion to spread mis and disinformation about legality of abortion and procedures. So we know that anti-abortion advocates are doing everything they can to ban abortion, including making false claims online, as well as in the media about abortion and the people who have them to justify denying people care. Another way that has been discussed, misinformation is spread is by anti-abortion centers, which promote fear amongst those seeking abortion care. And this impact is felt the hardest by Latinas and other communities of color. We actually recently published a report last November, right before the election, with the National Partnership with Women and Families that shows that over 6.5 million Latinas have been impacted by state bans, and they represent the largest group of women of color being affected since the Dobbs decision by state bans. So that's just a little bit of an overview. I'm going to turn it to Maria Alejandra, who's going to speak about specifically what we're seeing in our communities on social media, on messaging apps, and why Latinas are disproportionately impacted.
Thanks, Shamila. Once again, thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to talk about this conversation. A lot of what I'm going to say has already been mentioned by some of the other presenters, but I want to definitely talk about how the impact of big tech has affected specifically the Latinx community. So as we all know, the reliance of the Latina and Latinx community within social media and messaging platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp exposes and disproportionately exposes so many to misinformation about abortion. This is a result of the transnational and reliance on these platforms to connect with family members and loved ones in their home countries. Online misinformation campaigns about the safety and legality about abortion may contribute to the rise of maternal mortality and worse health outcomes as people delay and avoid the care that they need. Facebook and other platforms have focused primarily on disinformation in English, but have really left out Spanish language content free to like no critical fact checking. An example is like the 2022 election. Many people may not know just how safe and effective abortion care is, or abortion care in general can be ordered safely and effectively through a video or phone consultation. And when you add the extra layer of language barrier, that creates even more disinformation and misinformation. Latinas and Latinxes can then be more inclined to believe the misinformation because it so often resembles the realities of their countries of origin, which, as we all know, sometimes abortion can be completely illegal, and many have been imprisoned because of that. Spanish language political news influencers are constantly creating content online as their main source of abortion misinformation. Videos on YouTube or Facebook can carry a conversation through WhatsApp, Telegram group chats, which can push a false narrative in religious identity against supporting for abortion access. There is a study in the Pew Research Center of almost 49% of Latinx, Latinas use WhatsApp as their preferred method of communication, which, if there is no fact checking, then can stir and create a false narrative of information about that. I want to definitely talk about the shadow banning, but I think that my colleagues on this chat have already kind of talked about that as well. But another thing that I want to point out is that along with the kind of character changing of abortion, using different characters to write out abortion on TikTok or Facebook or on Instagram, one of the challenges that has been particularly specific to the Latina Latinx community is the word abortion itself. Abortion in Spanish is aborto, which is also the word used for a miscarriage. So that creates even a larger gap into creating more information and accurate fact checking when dealing and talking about abortion care within our community. Yeah, Shamila, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria Alejandra, for pointing out all the ways that misinformation spreads online. And we also know that, as I mentioned up top, anti-abortion clinics disproportionately impact our communities as well, that using deceptive tactics. So they particularly target Latinxes and other communities of color, young people, and people experiencing financial insecurity, which adds an additional hurdle to care for people that are already marginalized by healthcare systems and policies, and sadly can lead to delay in care, leading to those adverse health outcomes that Maria Alejandra mentioned. Because our communities face language and cultural barriers that hinder healthcare access and literacy, that can make them more likely to be deceived by anti-abortion centers, who often place billboards in Spanish immigrant communities and advertise services like free pregnancy tests in Spanish, both in person and online, outside of clinics. They also buy ads on Black television and use targeted ads on websites where they know Black women and Latinas are clicking. Recently heard a stat that over 30% of anti-abortion clinic budgets go towards advertising, so we know where they're spending a large amount of their resources, and it's to get our communities in the door. And this ultimately, for Latinas and others who may work multiple jobs, face financial and economic insecurity, or don't have paid leave or lack transportation, making a trip to a provider is already tough. So making another trip after they've been lied to or lured away from their expected appointment may delay or make it impossible for them to get the care they need. So a lot of the work that we do at Latina Institute includes exposing this misinformation. It includes educating our communities about the differences between anti-abortion clinics, CPCs, and actual licensed health care providers. We have a lot of great resources online, including links to partner publications. I wanted to shout out NARAL specifically put out a report last year entitled Translating Abortion Information, Spanish Language Anti-Choice Landscape, that was published in May of 2022. And encourage you guys to check that out. Or anybody who's on this call that wants a little bit more data, they have some really great visuals of screen grabs showing some really great examples about this. And one of the main things that they talk about there is that the high prevalence of Catholicism in our communities plays a major role in anti-choice messages about abortion from Spanish language influencers and outlets, which pushes these false narratives, pitting religious identity against support for abortion access. So one of the reasons why I mention that is because we actually have often monthly, sometimes every other month, conversations about how to talk about faith and abortion, and our education team puts those together. There's actually one happening tomorrow night at 6 p.m. But if you're not available to join tomorrow night, we have lots of great virtual events via Zoom that are, as I said, bilingual and are a great resource for folks to, like I said, continue to educate and combat these false narratives. So you can follow us at latinainstitute.org, at Latina Institute on social media, and if you go to our events page, you can find more about those events, sign our solidarity pledge, and continue to stay in this fight with us. So just want to say thank you so much to Reproaction for bringing us into this conversation, and look forward to hearing from the remainder of the presenters and answering questions during Q&A.
Thank you so much, Shamila and Maria Alejandra. That was really helpful. We've got one last, and if you have any questions for them, feel free to put it in the chat or into the questions tab, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. And I'm excited to introduce our last presenter, Erin Jorgensen from Shout Your Abortion. Erin works in communications there and is a musician living in Seattle, Washington. And I believe that all is not well with Shout Your Abortion's content going up online. Is that correct, Erin?
Yeah, that's true. We've had some like ups and downs for sure. Lots of the same things that people on this call have experienced as well. So Shout Your Abortion is basically a grassroots organization where we do a lot of cultural change, talking about abortion, people sharing their abortion stories, so abortion storytelling. And now recently we do a lot of information sharing specifically around abortion pills. So we've had plenty of posts removed. We've had our account deleted twice. Of course, everything via Meta is with no notice whatsoever. So you just kind of go to log onto your account and it's missing. So that's happened to us a few times. I'll just walk you through some of the things that we've experienced at SYA. So just to note that I think some things are changing at Meta, but it's so opaque that I'm not sure what is happening. So if I go into my account status, or if anyone here goes into their account status on Instagram, so Instagram is where we've had the most problems. You can see if your account is flagged or if your content is being widely recommended. And I think in last November, I went and looked at our account and we had like 5 or 6 posts that had been deleted. So our account was not being recommended to people. And when I look today, everything has like the green light. Account is being recommended to people, but again, I have no idea why that's happening. So just an example of how Meta is pretty opaque. So when we have posts removed, they're usually for 2 ostensible reasons. One is that it goes against the community guidelines, and the other is that it goes against the guidelines on sale of illegal or regulated goods. And of course, we don't have anything to do with selling medicine. We're not a clinic like Hey Jane, so all we are doing is sharing information. So yeah, we think that we're never going against account guidelines or community guidelines. So it's extremely frustrating that we're following the ostensible rules and still getting suspended and deleted. Yeah, so I will go through some of the strategies that I've been trying and experimenting with to get our account and posts reinstated. So the first one is contacting friends and colleagues directly inside Meta if you have people who work there. And you'll need evidence of the post or the account in question. So just screenshot it, get the account tag, and get the removal date if you can. And then you can ask your friend or colleague to file a request on the post or the account in question. So that's what I've been doing with some success, but of course, this isn't a great long-term strategy or a great strategy at all, because you're just spending a bunch of time like emailing 20 friends to see if they can like open a request for you. I would also say you can tag Meta and IG in your posts and ask people to tag and retag them and also share the posts. And I don't know if tagging or retagging is even, it's questionable if that has any impact at Meta, but I think it draws attention and conversation to the post and the topic, so it gets more people on your side. And just a note of something maybe not to do, something that I've done at SYA is kind of do an open call to be like, hey, anybody who works at Meta, like we got this post deleted, can you open a ticket for us? And I've learned recently that if we ask any Meta employees to file a request, it might be problematic for them because they have maybe a new policy that says that open calls may be a violation of internal company policy if the person filing the request doesn't have like a genuine connection with the company. So it has to be somebody that you know, a friend that you know, or has like believability being a friend that you know. So I would say build a contact list of folks who can open requests for you. I'm kind of like going back to that all the time. Save and track post removals, reinstatements, and correspondence. And so I have actually created a new Instagram account just for this purpose. And you can find it on Instagram at Abortion Posts Monitor. And right now there's just one post there. I already have a few more to put up, but it's just like an easy way for us to like look at an account and see all the post removals, account suspensions in one place. So an easy way to do that is just take a screenshot of the post that's removed, and then you can tag the account and or DM the account. Let's see what else. Yeah, most of the things that have been deleted have been just mentioning that the drugs exist. Mifepristone, misoprostol, just mentioning that they exist, and usually pointing to an information source, something like Plan C. Those get deleted pretty often. So again, it's extremely frustrating to just be sharing information and seeing those accounts be flagged. And my understanding of the way that this works is that depending on what the algorithm's doing that day, a post will get flagged for whatever reason, and then eventually a post has human eyes on it. So I'm thinking that these posts, it really depends on where this person's personal sensibilities lie regarding abortion, whether they're going to delete it, delete your account, suspend the account, delete the post. So yeah, we do need super strong guidelines from Meta about this, and they need to be like enacted among all their employees, and that's something that we definitely don't have right now. We've also experienced shadow banning at SYA, and again, it just depends on the day. Sometimes I can't find our account, sometimes I can't find Hey Jane or Plan C or accounts that I'm following and interacting with all the time. And I guess just one more thing, and this is pretty anecdotal about the internal culture at Meta, and this is just from friends who work inside the company. And what they told me is there's pretty much a firewall between people's work life and their personal beliefs. So even though many people might be on the side of abortion, that doesn't mean that they're going to talk about it at work. We've also heard that abortion is kind of a restricted topic at Facebook within their group communications platform. That's actually a restricted topic. That's what I heard back in last November. I don't know if that's changed at all. And also the fact that a lot of people who work at Facebook aren't US citizens, so it's going to be a lot scarier for them to rock the boat, bring up something that might get them in trouble, or they might lose their job potentially. So yeah, I guess the takeaways here, one more I think is to create a backup account for your Instagram before your account gets suspended. So we have one that's Shout Your Abortion Backup. So I would recommend creating that account now and asking your followers to follow that, so you'll have somewhere to go if your account does get suspended. And yeah, so you can follow us for now online on Instagram at Shout Your Abortion, Shout Your Abortion Backup, and then Abortion Posts Monitor. And yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you to all of our panelists. So appreciate you joining us today. And I really like how Erin put it. You can follow us for now. For now, you can also follow Reproaction on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're Reproaction. And please sign up for alerts at www.reproaction.org. We do these Act and Learn webinars every month. They're free and open to the public. We dive deeper into topics, and this way you will never miss your invitation. and also encourage you to take action. And if you're still on social media and Twitter, you know, to put out some tweets right now about how everyone deserves fact-based medical information about abortion, especially abortion pills. And it's important that big tech is held accountable to sharing accurate information. So just to let you know, the next webinar that we have scheduled will be on Thursday, May 25th. It'll be at 12 p.m. Eastern, and it's called RJ202, and we'll talk about reproductive justice issues in Washington, D.C. So now I'm going to open it up for questions. The first question that we have in is, and I think our panelists kind of touched on this, but I think there's probably more that can be said. Do companies give you any details about what caused the abortion-related content suppression, quote unquote, mistakes, unquote? And I can answer first from the Reproaction, like when we've had content suppressed, oftentimes it's happened quietly. They don't even tell us that they removed it. And then there's no place for us to give recourse, and it's nearly impossible to get details about what caused it. I'll open it up. I'm sure all of our panelists have something to say about this.
I can hop in. I think for the most part, it's pretty opaque. There does seem to be, in the past when we've brought things up with TikTok and Meta, because these conversations, it's just a conversation from Hey Jane, it feels like it's very easy for them to silo and be like, oh, that was a mistake. It shouldn't have happened and it won't happen again, as a way to kind of defend what ended up happening. And yet we keep seeing the same things happen over and over. And I think conversations like this are really important because it really indicates that it's something that's going on across really all the groups or anyone who might touch abortion or reproductive access in some way. And there just still is really not a lot of clarity or really honest feedback on what's triggering these issues. At least that's been my experience with Hey Jane.
Does that track with what you're experiencing at the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice?
Sorry, I was struggling to come off mute. Yeah, absolutely. Same goes with ads, not just content, but also ads. We run ads about simple things like advertising the educational events that I mentioned, and or we have a Latinx solidarity pledge, which just says simply that you're going to stand in solidarity with folks continuing to fight for abortion access. And so on various occasions, not just content, but actually our paid ads have been taken down. And that's been pretty much the experience of a lot of our other colleagues who do this sort of advocacy work and are specifically at the intersection of immigration and abortion. I think that's also important to note too, for those two things that often are monitored in a different way, we fall right squarely in that sweet spot. So I think that just adds another element and layer of us being targeted.
Thank you, Shamila. Erin, is there anything you'd like to add from the Shout Your Abortion experiences?
It's pretty much what Rebecca said. It's like, it's super opaque. The only answer that we ever get is, oh, this was a mistake and the mistake has been fixed. But sometimes there's no communication whatsoever. The post will just suddenly be reinstated or the account will be reinstated. So yeah, I don't have any clear reasons why.
Thank you. Yes. And that's, what they so want and want most of all is for our individual organizations and advocates to to be wondering what's happening by ourselves rather than working together. And it's important to draw connections and see that this is happening across the board to everyone. And I think this is a point where, just to opine for a moment, we have seen that big tech understands of certain issues of public health import, that they need to assess what they're doing and step up. And we certainly saw that on COVID, where as well as with elections, that they, applied different standards of scrutiny to make sure that quality information is getting out. And all of the organizations represented on this call are 100% devoted to putting out fact-based information that people can use. And one of the things that really gets my goat is that as we are getting suppressed and censored, that this anti-abortion disinformation is being allowed to flourish. We are coming pretty close up at time. How can, I'd like to hear from each panelist something that you'd like to ask our audience to do to carry forward this fight. So happy to start with Rebecca.
Yeah, I think, just reiterating what I had mentioned, we are all so busy. So if you see something, say something, and most importantly, screenshot it. I'm so glad that Erin has launched an account that's really kind of compiling all of these examples. And continue to use your platforms to share accurate information. There is so much mis and disinformation out there, but you are someone who your friends, your family, your loved ones, your community trust you for information. So, use that platform that you have and continue to share information that might help people access care.
Thank you, Rebecca. Maria Alejandra or Yamila, what from the NLIRJ would you like to share?
I can go ahead, Jamila. I would say, honestly, I think by standard of in the Latinx or Latina community, we tend to always lean with what our folks in our community are saying. It's our safe space. It's where we feel the most at home. And so talking about it with talking about abortion and in general is always a great start to make sure that you're talking about it with your loved ones and your friends and family, but then to also just engage. I think that social media has somewhat become a safe space for some. And so if you have that platform, kind of like what Rebecca said, to keep engaging, keep sharing, and definitely highlighting organizations that have been doing this work long before maybe other organizations have as well, and to always make sure and shed light on those organizations who are paving the way or who have trails blazed the way for us to continue doing our work.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Erin.
Yeah, I would just echo what the other panelists said. Using your voice if you feel safe doing so is hugely important, whether that's in person or online. I think sharing and engaging posts that you see that have been deleted or accounts removed, echoing what Rebecca said, it's just super hard to stay on top of all that. So yeah, if you do want to share them with the Abortion Posts Monitor account, that would be great. And I think one last thing to do would be thinking of ways to game the system versus appealing directly to Meta, because it hasn't been that helpful yet. So I think we have to kind of rely on ourselves and our own communities to solve the problem.
Thank you, Erin. And you have embodied that so well by setting up that Abortion Post Monitor account on Instagram. And I want to encourage everyone here to follow that. So thank you so much to all of our panelists. And thank you also to Elizabeth Skoski from our team for pulling all of this together and her considerable work on this report that we can't wait to release to you all. So thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. Thank you. Have a good one.